Design is not just about the way things look. It's not a thing, a product or a style or a particular job. Design is a process. It's a way of thinking. It's about problem solving, creativity, and being able to see what other people are looking for. And design is not something that only designers can do. When you understand the process of design thinking, you can use it to rethink problems, come up with new ideas, and find better solutions, regardless of whatever it is that you do. If you ask most people what design is, I think the first thing that would pop to mind would be some shiny, designy looking thing, a grand piece of architecture or a slick looking car or a fancy designer watch or chair. I think this is because for many people, they associate design with products or technology or things that are shinier and more expensive than normal things. I think there's this misconception that for something to be designed, it has to look a certain way, or there's this certain style or look about them. And for something to be designed, it's inevitably going to end up being more expensive. I also think the word design has been turned into this marketing term to sell things, to make things seem more high-end and desirable. And this only perpetuates the idea that design is about the product or the object or the way things look. I've been working as a designer for over 25 years now. And when I started out as a designer, I probably thought the same thing, or I know I thought the same thing. I was drawn to design by shiny, designy looking things. I wanted to be designing cool looking things. But over time, my view has completely changed. Don't get me wrong, I still like designing nice looking things, but the idea that design is principally about the product or the way things look, I think is the completely wrong way to look at it. Design is about so much more than just the way things look. It's not a thing. It's not a product or a style or a particular job. Design is a process and it's a way of thinking. So when I'm asked to explain what design is, I never talk in terms of aesthetic or styles or anything like that. I explain design as being a process and a way of thinking. I talk about it in terms of three particular elements: problem solving, creativity, and being able to see what other people are looking for. So in this video, I'm going to explain what design or design thinking means to me in terms of these three particular elements, and how, if you think about design as a way of thinking and a process, it can be applied to anything that you do, regardless of whether you're a designer or not. I think that design at its core is about problem solving. As a designer or a creative person, one of the best skills that you can develop is the process that you use to step through problems, to rethink them and reshape them, and turn them from being a problem into an opportunity that gives a project a direction. And the problem-solving process, in my experience, is never really a straight line. It's about developing options that explore different ideas and possibilities, having a way to test and evaluate those, then reshaping and refining them and testing them again until you reach the solution to the problem that you're actually looking for. And one of the most important things I think you can actually do as a designer is not to just solve the problems or brief that are given to you at the start. It's to actually start by questioning the assumptions and problems that are originally suggested to you. I often find when I receive a brief for a project, well, they're usually, well, they're often not very well defined, but when they are, they usually list out a series of problems that they're trying to solve and then suggest a particular direction that they think the project needs to head in. I have a phrase that I use when I'm working with new clients at the start of a project and I'm questioning the brief that I've been given. And that's to say, it's useless to find the perfect answer to the wrong question. For example, if we're talking about helping someone to redesign a house, it would often start by having a discussion around how they've outgrown the house, how they need more space, and then lead on to discussion around how they want to add 2 more bedrooms and a living room and a study, and then show maybe some images of houses that they like the look of. I've actually seen lots of designers, or too many designers, that would just run with that. Their starting point would be to lay out different options for the size of those spaces and how they might work, what they would possibly look like, without stepping back at the start and really questioning some of those assumptions. It's not to suggest for any minute that the client doesn't know what they want or need, but I just find if you have a conversation at the start around things like, how do they live in the space now? How many people live in there? What are their ages? How do they think they'll be living in 5 years' time, 10 years' time? Do they like spending more time indoors or outdoors? Possibilities around the flexible use of space. Just having those conversations at the start can completely change the thinking and direction around a project. And it doesn't matter if the design is for a house or a city or a chair. This process of problem solving and of questioning the initial problems and assumptions on which the project is based is one of the most important and valuable things you can do as a designer. For me, creativity is essentially about pulling together different ideas and reshaping them into something new. Again, this is a core part of the design process, and it's one of the most important things you can do in terms of your role and value as a designer. The fact that someone approaches a designer or a creative to work on a project means from the start that they're actually looking for something new or different, or that they have a problem that traditional approaches or thinking probably aren't going to solve. Going back to the house analogy, if they were looking for something traditional and regular, there's no shortage of project home builders and existing house plans and even prefabricated housing options. Some admittedly are better than others, but the point is that there's no shortage of choice if that's what you're looking for. And it's the same with any creative field, whether you're designing a logo or a collection of clothing or a piece of art. There's endless off-the-shelf options, and picking something straight off the shelf or pulling it straight off the internet is by far the easier approach. But your value as a designer or a creative is to be able to use creativity to come up with new ideas or better answers than what is already out there. For me, often the designers and creatives that I admire the most come up with new and creative solutions by taking inspiration and ideas from different fields and blending them together in a way that people wouldn't often think of. It might be mimicking natural systems in architecture, or coming up with new recipes inspired by music, or designing new clothing based upon traditional crafts or incorporating recycled materials. There's no rules, and your process and inspiration will change over time, but your creativity and your ability to think creatively is one of your greatest tools as a designer, and it's something that you've got to continually work on and feed over time. This third idea or principle is kind of a combination of the other two, but an evolution as well. Sometimes when you work on a project, the client or the people involved will have a lot of preconceived ideas or a pretty narrow view around the solution that they're looking for or what they're going to get. They may be thinking that the problem is A and the solution is going to either be B or C, and it's your job to help them decide on B or C and then work out what that's going to look like. But through the process of rethinking and reframing the problems that you're trying to solve, and by applying your creative thinking to come up with new ideas, you'll actually start to see new possibilities and directions for which the project could head in that other people haven't been able to see. You'll be able to see the solutions that other people have actually been looking for. This is one of the most exciting parts of the creative process, and also one of the most important and valuable things you can do as a designer to open up people's minds to possibilities that they hadn't thought of. To go beyond the superficial level of what something should look like, to completely change the thinking around what it could actually be. But how you move through that process so that people have a understanding and a sense of ownership over where you end up is a really important part of that process. If you just come up with a completely new idea or direction and you dump it on them, like the big reveal, and they can't see the link between where you started and the initial brief and where you've ended up, it just won't work. But I'll explain that more and give some examples in some upcoming videos. The point I'm trying to make is that, to me, your job as a designer is not to give people your answers. It's to help them to find their own answers, to help them to be able to see what they're actually looking for. That gives an overview of what design and design thinking means to me and what I think are the key parts involved. And as I said at the start of the video, design is about so much more than just the way things look. It's a way of thinking that can be applied to basically anything that you do. A phrase that I often use is to say, the purpose of design isn't to make shiny things, it's to make our lives better. And when you start to think about design and design thinking in that way, the applications and the possibilities are kind of endless. And if you've made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching, and I hope it has given you some ideas and inspiration. And if you do have any of your own thoughts or comments that you want to share, I really would love to hear from you. One of the things I'm trying to do in making these videos is to build a bit of a creative community here, which I think I've got a total of 20 subscribers so far, but the idea is to be able to build a place where people will be able to share their own ideas and get a bit of inspiration. So please subscribe, share any comments, and please do reach out. And in the next video, I think I'm going to talk about the importance of having a process or a structure and how that can actually help you to become a better designer or a creative. So hopefully you'll see that new video out soon.